Happy Halloween. So for the month of October, I have been focusing more on ranking movies. The reason why is because I'm a huge fan of horror movies. So far, I have ranked the Scream franchise, I have ranked the Paranormal Activity franchise, and today I want to rank the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So starting at the bottom of the list, Nightmare on Elm Street, the TV show. Now, this is a disclaimer. I have never watched the show. It came out when I was very little, and my parents were not huge fans of Nightmare on Elm Street at the time. It had kind of just gotten started, so they didn't really get into the show, and I kind of just missed it. As it stands, I have not owned a collection that has come with the show, only the movies. So I haven't even been able, as an adult, to find the show available to watch. Next on the list is the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Now, this was not horrible, but it wasn't as great. I think if it had more movies, it would have probably been better. Jackie Earle Haley was not horrible as Freddy Krueger. I really think they needed to stick with him and maybe make one or two more trying him out as a new Freddy Krueger to see if it really would have worked. Next on the list, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now this is a movie I had not really gotten to watch until I was an adult. My parents did have some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies when I was a kid, but this was not one of them. All they had was the original Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, and that's it. That's all they had. So, I mean, those were the only ones I was really familiar with growing up. This one, as an adult, it did not really, it felt like it was rushed into production when it was made, and it didn't have the same quality that the first one had. I had already seen a bunch of people over the years talk about all the gay undertones with this movie, and frankly, I didn't really see it. I was more concerned with Freddy Krueger, what he's doing, how he's trying to come back, wondering why it had nothing to do with any of the kids from the first one or any of the story from the first one. It just felt very off, like it was trying to be a different type of Freddy movie. And maybe that's the stuff people were talking about, but I just didn't like it very much. Next on my list is Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Now, as I'll get into later on, this was part of what I consider the Nightmare on Elm Street trilogy, and I just felt like this one was the weakest of the trilogy. It had one really good aspect that I like, and that was the fact that, by the way, there will be spoilers moving forward, so if you have not watched these and you don't want to spoil anything, stop the video here. But anyways, so the main character, Alice, is pregnant as she starts having dreams while she is awake, and she finds out that unborn babies dream most of the time. And I love how they worked that bit in. It really worked with the whole nightmare aspect, and that Freddy was coming after her and trying to get to her. Everything else about that movie, I just didn't really care as much for. The stuff with the hospital and everything, it wasn't that great. So that's why it's this low on the list. Next up is the one most people put at the very bottom of their rankings whenever you talk about this franchise. And it sits pretty much here in the middle for me. It's not the greatest Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not the worst. True. it does deviate from the main source material quite a bit, but it gives the character Freddy Krueger so much backstory. The movie I'm talking about is Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy's Dead. I actually really like the comedy in this one. I think the comedy here is kind of some of the best. You know, when Freddy delivers some of these lines, it's just like, okay, we are just strapped in and watching a stand-up of Freddy Krueger. It's not to be taken seriously. It just expands on his lore, on the background of his character. And I think at this point, it really dives into the fact of who Freddy was when he was alive. And I think that's what turns people off the most with this one, because up until this point, it's very ambiguous. Did Freddy commit the crimes that he was accused of? The courts said no. They set him free. They let him go. And the parents, they reacted to that and they killed him anyway. And then he came after the kids. Up until this point, that's all we know. That's all we're ever told. Freddy doesn't say one way or another if he actually did the crimes. So, this movie basically hints, yes, he did do those crimes, but he also had a family. And he was torn away from his family after he killed his wife and nearly was about to kill his daughter. But his daughter got away. Probably one of my most favorite scenes from this movie, one of the best Freddy lines, has to be this scene right here.
Oh shit, Spencer! Come on, John! Get out of here now, please! Now!
Hey! You forgot the power glove!
No! Bastard!
Ow! Boing! Boing! Boing, 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 boing! What do you know? I beat my score.
Up next, we have Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I really enjoy this one, but if I'm trying to watch the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, this is one I will skip until after everything else. This one does not directly deal with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise lore. This kind of happens inside our own world. It's a very good movie on its own, and you kind of do have to know about the other movies and what's happened to really get some of the stuff talked about in this movie. So, this is one, if you're going to watch it, if you're going to watch the whole series, leave this one for last. It's not the very best in the franchise, as far as I'm concerned, but this is one that you're going to want to wait till you're all done to watch. In the number 4 spot, I have Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Now, this one is probably at the top of most people's list. It's the one that got everything started. For me, though, I have over the years noticed a few problems. There's one scene where it looks like Freddy looks like an old man. He's walking like an old grandpa. I don't know if that was intentional. The other things, too, is I did not really like the very end of it. I guess we're supposed to just kind of disregard the very end and say that did not happen because of the future installments. But at the end of the movie, Nancy defeats Freddy Krueger, wakes up, her mom tells her it was all a dream, and she goes off to school with her friends, gets into the car, and the car hood is painted like Freddy Krueger, and the mother gets sucked through a window. I find this incredibly confusing because it's like, well, she defeated Freddy Krueger though, so did she not defeat him? I mean, if you're watching the franchise as a whole, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why it's number 4 on the list. Number 3 on the list, and this might shock a lot of fans, but number 3 is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. This is one that I didn't watch it as much as a kid, maybe because when I had it available as a kid, it was kind of too scary for me, because I was very young at the time, and I just couldn't get into this one as much. As an adult, I've come to like it quite a bit. I love the music from it. The theme song is almost everybody's favorite. When you think of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, the main song, Dream Warriors, from this movie is pretty much, boom, right there at the top of the list. So, yeah, I mean, I do like this movie, and this basically kicked off the Nightmare on Elm Street trilogy for me. And the reason why is because it basically goes 3, 4, and 5 are one continuous story. So, sitting at number 2 is Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Now, I put this at number 2 because this is probably the one I saw most. This is probably the one that I'm most familiar with. And out of all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, this has one of my most favorite lines by Freddy Krueger.
Welcome to Wonderland, Alice.
I love that line. I quote that line so much. I don't know why. I really like it. And I like how the movie comes to an end. I like how Freddy gets defeated. I like a lot of the stuff that happens, how she gains powers from all her friends who fall because she's connected to them. And how it directly ties into 3 and immediately pretty much leads right into Nightmare on Elm Street 5. To me, this was the Empire Strikes Back of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. But then comes along number 1. Now, this one, I want to say, was the only Freddy Krueger movie that I actually was lucky enough to see in theaters. And I loved it. I was so hyped for this movie, which of course is Freddy vs. Jason. Now, I'm a big Freddy Krueger fan. I'm probably more of a Chucky fan first, but Freddy Krueger is kind of like my second choice. He's the killer I grew up with. I didn't really grow up a lot with Michael Myers or with Jason or Leatherface or any of those others. The two that mainly I ever saw as a kid was Chucky and Freddy. So I was Team Freddy the entire time. While yet this is at the top of the list, and it is one of my favorites, and I love watching it, there is one major issue I have with the movie. And the major issue is this. And I think a lot of people have this same issue, the fire and water thing. I have never once seen Jason back away from water. I've never seen Freddy back away from fire. In fact, usually Freddy is around fire all the time. Jason is around water all the time. If they were going to have a fear, maybe they should have swapped it. Had Jason afraid of fire and Freddy afraid of water. That would have probably made a little bit more sense, even though the whole thing is stupid just generally. But other than that, I like a lot of the comedy in this. I like a lot of the little details that they have woven into this. And I love how they used Freddy to get Jason going. Although, to be honest with you, I will honestly say that when this was coming out, I had called it way before. I hate versus movies for one reason. Because they always promise us, oh, Freddy versus Jason, or Alien versus Predator. Yet, hopefully anyone going into these movies knows you are not going to get that. Not really. It's always going to come down to a human who gets in the way. Or in this case, a teenager who gets in the way. Yeah, the two fight. Honestly, everyone says Jason won. I say it was a stalemate because at the very end, we see Freddy wink at the camera. Well, first off, if he's dead, how's he winking? And second, if he was dead, he would go right back to the dream world. We already discovered that in previous films. So you can't really kill Freddy. He either goes to hell or he goes back into the dream world. And he always comes back. So Jason, he always comes back too. So really, the two of them right there, it's a stalemate. They're gonna just basically both be immortal. But that is my ranking for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. If you agree, great. If you don't, feel free to talk about it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I want to thank everybody for watching. And if you haven't checked out my book series, I have a book series on Amazon that is one continuous story, an epic great fantasy series called The Guardian of Light. I also have 2 Halloween short stories out on Amazon right now. To everybody who over the past week got their free ebook, I want to say I really hope you enjoyed those. I love to hear your feedback, and if you could post a review on Amazon, that'd be awesome. If you have not and you would like to check them out, I will leave a link in the description below. Also, if this is your first time visiting my channel, please feel free to subscribe. I would love to have you. And every time I get 10 subscribers, I give away a free digital code. If I can get another 10 subscribers this month, the next digital code will be for the Invisible Man. So, hit that subscribe button and get a chance at getting a free digital code. It works out for everyone. I want to thank you all for watching, and happy Halloween.